I kept on meeting people who were on this journey thinking they were alone.
Explore fractional work. There's a sense of freedom. There's a sense of fear and vulnerability.
You're the one making the decision. The titles, the companies are not that important. What you have done is important.
What kind of mindsets do we need to function in this new world?
Being good communicators.
You need to think like an entrepreneur. How do you work as a founder?
The big question is how?
Build in like boom, boom, boom. It's a good time for you to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and the companies that you're involved in, communities that you run. Maybe you can share with our fellow listeners and viewers.
I'm Moritz Kaffsack. I run two things. I run a community called Portfolio Careers in Asia. We launched about 2.5 years ago, and we are now at 2,500 members across the region, very, very heavily concentrated in Singapore. What do all our members have in common, and what do they join PCA for? They're all in the second half of their careers. They have spent usually those 10, 15, 20, 25 years on the corporate side. It has served them well. They have done well. They have reached C-level. They have run big operations and teams, but they feel the future should be different for them. And they have a strong desire to have more purpose in their professional life and to have more control also over what they do and who they work with. And so out of that desire comes a need for connection, because most of the time the people you know in your work life are also employed, and not everybody has this desire, right? And so PCA from the beginning was able to catch everyone who's curious about it, and also people who are already on the way but feel it's rather lonely if you do it by yourself, right? We do a lot of things with the community. We run a lot of peer-to-peer connectivity, a lot of learning from some people who are a year or two ahead of everyone else. It helps a lot because you can have a bit of a modeling, although everyone's journey is unique, of course, but you see how some people have shaped their path. The second company I run is Flexer. We are full service comprehensive firm, means we don't place people or recruit. I'm not from that background. I don't know how to do that. What I do know how to do is provide these products to clients and to companies that solve specific problems for them. And for me, and this is also the thing that we tell all our fractional leaders in the community and in the programs we run, the big shift is that you're no longer playing a role in an organization. You're now solving a problem for someone. And so the better you understand what that problem is and how you can solve that problem, in what format you can solve that problem for them, the more likely you will do really well in the work that you do. And that's what we are scaling at Flexer, with a bench of people from very different backgrounds, go-to-market, marketing, former CTOs, CHROs, CFOs, etc. The two things I run, they are somewhat connected. They're in the same space. I think it's a very exciting ecosystem. I don't know where it's going to head. It's really dynamic at the moment in Singapore. I'm lucky to have a lot of people in that ecosystem who are also working and building in that space, and we all know each other, and it's a good group.
Very cool. So Flexer is the company that connects people or your community to clients. Is that right to say?
Not the community as a whole. The community, like I mentioned, is 2,500, and they are at very different stages of their journey. So some are still employed and trying to figure out how to make that leap, right? Some are just getting started. Some are going into very, very clearly to the fractional path with startups. Some want to be independent consultants with corporates. Some people become coaches and write a book on coaching. Some people write a book on something completely different because that's what they've been wanting to do. So that's what I mean about the formats, right? The formats differ of how you bring your skills in. Flexer is looking to be very, very sharp on very specific formats, right? So it's very specific people with very specific skill sets that can build products with us.
Very interesting. Maybe walk us through, how do we get to the Flexer bench? How do we then work with clients? How does this amazing ecosystem work for you and the team?
So two insights, right? A lot of the people that are out there are new to this. The operators are new to it. So we want to be able to work with people who just jumped into independent work. That's the first one. The second one is many clients also have not worked like this before. They're missing the manual of how to do it and how to do it well. I think maybe one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's similar to hiring. It is not at all. It is very, very different. And so what we have done is we've built basically a methodology around it. And this is what we do as a full service offer, to say we comprehensively will run this end to end for you. And we will bring the right people together that will solve this problem for you. We will scope it. We will price it. We will come to an agreement. We will manage the onboarding. We will manage the troubleshooting. We will have frequent check-ins on all sides. This is all based on a lot of the experience I have personally as a fractional leader, the experience that I have in 12 years in running agency businesses with clients, all the things that can go wrong, we try to mitigate. What we do is we look to increase the chances of success for both sides.
How did you come up with this idea? You mentioned earlier you came up with like very organic conversations, people kind of in the mid-careers or looking to do something else in their journey.
The moment I founded PCA was when I kept on meeting people who were on this journey thinking they were alone.
Yeah.
And I said, we got to get together. 30 people, that's how it started. No intention or drive to grow it beyond that. I thought we would end up maybe at 50 or 60.
Yeah.
Here we are today, right? Like it was really like at the right time. I think it was timing is a big thing. Yeah.
Right. What are the challenges? Like personally, I think Fractional is cool. You can live the life that you want to live based on how you're working. You don't have to be in the office all day. You're able to work on projects that people really truly value for the experience that you bring. So it's very sharp. It's very pointed. It's practical. Skip the BS. Let's get things done. Move on. And then we impact the business, whatever that may be. And you mentioned earlier, how do we operationalize that department? So curious, like as you speak with clients or companies, like how do they view Fractional? Like, is it a new concept to them? I think people might know it, but perhaps not as operationally experienced because some of them may not have actually done it before. What stories do you have to share?
Yeah, it's evolved. So in 2023, when we started the community, it was the fall of that year, I think, when we had our first event, which was not our event. It was actually a person that I collaborate a lot with now, Elena Chow from Connect One. She runs a talent solutions firm, and she organized a panel on this topic. This was the first event that I was at and that I was moderating the panel. She asked me to come in, and we did a few after that. And in the beginning, all of the events had a question mark in them. It was always like, is Fractional here to stay? Question mark. Or is Fractional useful? Is Fractional the right thing? Yeah. This was the conversation. I mean, two reasons. First of all, that was the question in everyone's mind, honestly, right? Like, is it actually something or is it just like a fad? And secondly, I really liked that positioning because it helped bring out the critics. And there were a lot of critics at that point and skeptics, right?
Hey.
I love the skeptics.
Yes.
I've been to too many of these events. I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah.
Where everyone is just rah, rah, rah. And this is amazing. And you know what? The people who have questions in their head, they leave with the questions. Yeah. They don't raise their hand and say, I'm sorry, I think you're wrong. Most of the time. Some people do. Yeah. What I want to do is I want them to raise their hand. And you should create an environment at these events where you say, let's have a debate. Who thinks, and one of the early panels, there were a lot of critics, a lot of skepticism, and it helped us address it, right? Yeah. Like it helped the real practitioners talk about it also and say what they do to mitigate risks or make it work. We have come a long way, I would say. I don't see the question marks anymore in the headlines of the events. Yeah. What has happened since is the volume has just really gone up of the conversation, right? So the awareness is, I think 2024, we reached high levels of awareness already. What's happened in 2025 is the conversation has shifted. Many people have heard of it now. Many people know somebody who has done it well, either on the client side or on the fractional side. So the doubt is not there that much anymore. The big question is how. So we've shifted from the if to the how. And the how is actually more difficult, I would say. Thankfully, there's a lot of people who are doing it well now and a lot of clients who have case studies to share of how they do it, and they have created systems for themselves. And it is honestly, I see this with clients. They bring in one fractional, then they bring in a second, they bring in a third. You believe in the model. You say, wow, I can actually get senior people helping me with things that otherwise I could never afford. So this is where it has shifted. Is there a standardized version of no?
No,
we are not there. No, absolutely not. And and that's, I think it's totally fine. It just means that we all still have to do a very good job at being deliberate about how we operate and also being good communicators about the model. Explain the model in the terms of the client. Explain the model in the terms of the operator rather than defining it for ourselves and then blasting that out there. You know, I feel this is it's an education effort more than anything. Yeah. And it will never be for everyone. The same goes for clients. It will not be for every client. It will not be for every individual, but our job in many ways, I think, is to catch and find and speak to and work with all the people that actually this is right for. And they just sometimes haven't come across the right person to work with, you know.
Right.
And this is what we do.
Yeah, very interesting, because when I first started my own company, my own journey, right, was I a fractional business guy or a marketing person? Am I a coach or a business consultant? I felt that I could do many different things because of, the background and the work that I've done before in my corporate career. And I was like, okay, so how do I approach this? I think you mentioned it a little bit. It's like, okay, kind of focusing on certain areas that you feel that you bring the biggest value to companies, I suppose, right? I went down the path of working with leadership on designing programs, experiences to shift mindsets, to learn more about leadership skills themselves, so on and so forth, strengths and all that. But I didn't really go down the route of being like the fractional marketing guy, fractional CMO, or fractional business route, maybe I wasn't able to find these opportunities. I think that was one of the things. I wasn't sure, like, where should I look for? Maybe I was looking in the wrong places also, right? Because if I would look at myself and let's say I were running a company, I would love this superstar CMO or CTO person or a superstar HR leader. I obviously cannot afford his or her salary for 3 years, for example. I'm just curious, like in the companies that you work with so far, what type of companies are your biggest pool? What are the key reasons why they were exploring it? I just want to unpack that a little bit, because I tried thinking when I first started this 3 years ago, like this journey, I was like, how does it work for me? How am I going to approach it? Yeah. And I didn't find that. Maybe if I found it earlier, maybe it could be a very different journey, but that's fine. Maybe it could be something I could add on, this fractional practice. Who are your typical clients?
So many people doing so many different things, and they're all amazing. You know,
Okay.
Like, you find your format and you go with it, and then you can evolve it. You can add on top, right? I would never force it. When you're on your own, you know this better than anyone, right? You also rely so much on serendipity, and on the right timing of meeting the right people, and it gets you one step further. It might not be the full solution of what you want to do, but it gets you one step closer to what it is that you want to do, right? I think everyone has that experience of it's a process. It's a journey, and I rarely meet people who say, I know exactly where I was going to be in 3 years. You know, it's not like that. So the formats differ and vary very widely. Pure fractional format is actually you are partnering with a leadership team at a smaller organization, SME or a startup, and they usually value your skills and experience in that specific function, be it finance or HR or tech. If you walk into a meeting room, everyone treats you like you're on the team. And that makes you incredibly effective, even though you're only there maybe a day or two a week. But you can only do this for 2 or 3 companies at the same time. And so some practitioners out there love that, because they love getting deep into the work with building a company, but specific to their skill and not filling a role, but just the thing that they're really good at and bringing that to different companies, right? So it's a very popular model. It's completely different from a packaged offering. Right? A packaged offering is much more, you actually have developed a product and you are competing differently also. One question I always ask in our accelerator program, we run a PCA fractional business accelerator program where we have cohorts of individuals building their fractional business, going through an intense 5-week journey to fast track themselves. And one key question we keep on asking through the program is, for this service or product that you're looking to bring to market, who's your competitor? Because for the pure fractional product, often the competitor is a full-time hire or in action, right? Or just a gap. And that is completely different from a packaged offering, because there often your competitor is another external. It is an agency or a consultant or in action again, right? And so with a package offering, you operate completely differently. Like the way that you go to market, the way that your clients compare you, the way that you price it, right, is completely different. And so both are absolutely valid paths to go. Most of the time, the people that are in this are because they have a passion to make something else work for their careers and for their professional lives. And so you pick often the things that just speak to you. And I think you should do that also. You have to do it, because it is such a hard journey. If you're not motivated by what you're doing, you might as well not do it, because it is tough. You get real feedback from the market. It's not feedback that someone's writing to you. It's just a yes or a no. The wins are great and amazing. Therefore, you really own them, but there are also daily rejections. And if you don't find the model that really, when it works, you are energized by it and you love it, then it's really hard. So most people work out with that, I think. But you can, of course, combine this. So what's really interesting is you can be a fractional, of course, and then you can start offering workshops. You can start offering maybe also sorts of sprints, which is a great product to bring to market. I think as a fractional leader, you can do a lot of different things. As an independent consultant, if you haven't done the fractional model, it's a bit difficult, because the fractional model itself requires you to be on a leadership team without really being part of the leadership team. It's a very interesting tension that has a lot of benefit if it works, when it works out. On the client side, these two could not be more different from each other. And even though the same person can do both, the client evaluates you completely differently, whether they're looking for someone to be a fractional on their team, or whether they're looking for someone to install a new operating system, change management, transform the organization, grow into a new market or whatnot, right? So I would say listen to your client, right? Because they're the only ones who know the truth. Nobody else has the truth. So they are the only ones. And then no one else can tell you what it is that you should bring to them.
You know, if you're embarking on a entrepreneurial kind of route, if fractional is in that space as well, do you have the runway to give yourself that space to really make a career, which is the next 10, 15 years of your life, that how you want to live that. So my narrative has always been, I look at myself, corporate route, or doing my own thing that I really passionate and enjoy. And the question I want to answer is, how do I continue working for a big MNC? Different dimensions. Like, it's no good or bad. Everyone thrives in different arenas, right? And we've done that route also. And I decided that, okay, if not now, when can I start do my own thing? And I enjoy the freedom of it. I enjoy working with different clients. I enjoy solving different problems. And I enjoy meeting different people. And especially in the leadership realm, the stories you get to hear is not usually published. It's quite cool. And I really love that insider view of things. And so the reason why I started this podcast is kind of get that view of stories, what people have in their minds and what they can bring to organizations and people, right? And others. And also the itch that I wanted to start something and not rely on like a job. I mean, I know it's weird to maybe say that because what I'm doing is my job, it's my career, right? What I'm doing right now. But essentially the flexibility, right? And the sense of satisfaction and joy, building and really working closely with clients to deliver outcomes that are awesome and it impacts people's lives and the business, more importantly. So those were just kind of the thinking that I had walking into this fractional space or solopreneurship or running your own little boutique agency or practice. The question I wanted to answer to myself was, how do I want to live the next 10 to 15 years of my life? Where I am right now in my career in my life, right? If I waited another 10 years, will it be too late? Enjoying this podcast? Hit the like and subscribe button so that we can continue bringing you great content.
Let me ask you, when you say it's a job, what's the difference between your job for the first 15, 20 years and this new job that you have now in terms of the way that you feel about it serving your needs at this point in your life?
Great question. If I don't feel energized and excited about what I'm doing now versus a corporate job, then I might as well go find a day job. It's not about the money. I mean, the finances are important, but it's really about that sense of ownership, the sense of freedom. I say this in another podcast. One of my core values is freedom. I like to be free, meaning sleeping peacefully at night and do what I want to do and enjoy the work that I do. In an organization, like in a corporate environment, it's a bit different. I'm not saying you cannot do that. I think the energy and the feeling is just quite different. So that was my benchmark in that sense, Obviously, if you make good money, it's a great bonus. But then again, running your own business, the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how you can drive the business. Whereas in an organization, you have a fixed salary, a fixed bonus. Yeah, good money still, but you don't have that certainty, like regularity of financial monthly paycheck. High risk, high return, in that sense, right?
Yes.
So that was really my mindset. And I think I'll touch on one last point, and this came to me fairly recently in the past 1.5 years, was the satisfaction of a big organization coming to you as an independent person and saying that I would love to work with you. It feels so different versus me working as an employee in an MNC. It's so satisfying. It's like, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I could do this. Let's go. Let's keep doing this, and that energy, that childlike feeling, I love it.
Yeah. And it's all yours, It's all yours. You built it. It's your skills that you bring to it. It's very different. I mean, like I mentioned in the beginning, the business card example, right?
Yeah.
Like you identify very strongly with your company when you're employed. Yeah. Depending on the company, sometimes really strongly. Sometimes you fuse your identity with the organization in some ways, right?
Yes.
What a lot of people experience when they step out on their own for the first time is loss.
Yeah.
The loss of the brand that was backing them up when they, in very simple day-to-day settings, like having a business conversation or a networking conversation, where they feel, before I was Moritz, CXO at X company. Yeah. And once you become successful on your own, it flips into an incredible satisfaction to saying, they're just buying me.
Yeah.
And with everything that I have, this is what I am now. I find that there's an amazing flip side to it, to say that's the freedom that you're talking about, right? Because you actually can decide what you want to do and get recognized and financially rewarded for it. And so I feel this loss is as strong as it is, it can be equally rewarding then when you get out of it and realize what opportunities you have opened up by shedding the corporate brand that you once identified with so strongly and that backed you up in every meeting. Backing you up in every meeting also means, well, of course, yes, you're great, but we're buying your whole organization. But if you're on your own, they're buying you. That's the difference, I think.
Yeah. Then there's also pros and cons. We spoke a little bit about it at the start before we officially recorded this. But for me, having good partners honest, even though you're working as individuals, running your own companies, like it really makes a huge difference. Me finding my current business partners, Jason, Brian, Conan, really makes a difference. The transparency, the honesty about what's working, what's not working, and the safe space that you feel to be critiqued by people.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yes.
And I will never forget the day when I first closed my first deal, first year, and I showed up for a session for a big agency, a big company. They didn't arrange the tables the way I wanted it to be. The projector wasn't set up properly, and I literally had to take off my jacket, it was sweaty, move the tables to put everything in order while they were out for lunch. And then when they came back, we just went going, right? And that moment hit me. It was like, this is going to be my new life. It's going to be my new chapter. We used to come from big titles, big organizations, big companies. Gerald from this, managing director for this company, here I am. And people would talk to you because of your position. But then maybe if you shed that position, would they still be your friend? It's a very different thing.
Yeah.
You as an individual, as Moritz, versus CEO of this big company last time, and it's a different space. There's a sense of freedom, there's a sense of fear and vulnerability, but a sense of excitement as well.
And authenticity.
Yeah, and
because
authenticity.
Clients see that you're now not representing an organization of how many thousand people, but you're coming to them with something you have built that you think will benefit them. And they also often see that you obviously come from a similar background as them, or you're definitely someone who is at eye level with them. You're not selling someone else's product, you're selling your own product.
Exactly.
And you believe in it very differently, right? It is completely different when you have sat day after day, night after night, working with your partners to build something that you so strongly believe in, because it combines everything that you know from the past and everything that you see in the market that you currently gain from conversations with clients.
Yeah.
And that is palpable. Like, clients feel that. They see that you want to benefit them with this, right?
Yeah.
It's a very different conversation, I think. Of course, also with the rejection, also with the fact that you have taken the leap and you are now on your own. But I see it in two ways. I see it, one, in the community, because we have so many people who come from extremely well-known organizations with extremely big titles, extremely high caliber, highly skilled, highly experienced people who treat each other with humility and a helpfulness, because we're all on a new journey, right? Yeah. And that in itself I find amazing, but it also translates to the client relationship.
Totally.
Because similarly, there's a humility in being an entrepreneur. And I think it's combining that with an immense amount of skills and experience is a magic formula, honestly.
Agree.
It gives you a flexibility. It gives you also the ability to say, no, I believe this is the way to go, not another way. It gives you the ability to say, I will work with the people I want to work with, not the people I don't want to work with.
Yes.
Because in the end, you're the one making the decision, right? Yeah. And it's your financial gain or loss also at the end of the day. Like I said in the beginning, a client notices usually in the first 10 minutes that they're sitting across from someone who knows what they're doing and who's done it before, right? And who's trying to help them. So
yeah, so interesting, right? For the folks in your community, and everyone is on the different journeys, right? In different areas and different, are there one or two success stories that you feel was super amazing and inspirational to you?
Yeah, I don't even know where to start. When we talked about this, we talked about the sense of loss, right? We talked about the need for new network for people who are on this. When you see people go through this, we bring in usually around 20 to 30 new members a week. And I see in many of them, when I chat with them, when I welcome them into the community, I see just the happiness to say, I found a spot where there are other people who are in this and whatnot, right? But there's a whole journey they go through, right, over the months and years. And so when you see them come out successfully, it's incredible. I mean, I would say there are some people who've been doing this for years before it was.
It's so cool, man.
Well known, and before it was pioneers, right? They had to figure out everything by themselves. I have huge respect for what some and they know who they are. I would say yes, they've paved the way also, but they also just in the way that they can talk about their experience. And we do a lot of that in the community. We do a lot of the sharing from people who are a bit ahead of everyone else.
Yes.
The way they talk about it, they really they had a tough journey. You know, the community is there, and I don't just mean portfolio careers in Asia. Generally, there's an ecosystem now, right? We're not the only ones in space, thankfully, right? So what you see now is you see a lot of new opportunities. So one of my favorite things to happened actually in our last accelerator program in October, where we had 19 in the cohort. They're all building fractional businesses individually. They come from completely different backgrounds. They come from completely different functions. And halfway through the cohort, 5-week program, one of them received a brief from their client and immediately saw an opportunity to bring in someone else on the team. And so they tied up complementary skill sets, but much stronger in the way they could show up to their clients, won the project and ran it together, right? And I think if you can find that within 19 people, when you work closely together, then we can do a lot more of that, I think. I think this is where it gets really interesting then, because you start thinking more partnerships, more collaboration, more products. You start competing in different places, not just as fractionals, but also as people who provide services better than some other businesses do. And then you start getting really creative about that entrepreneurship journey. Right? And the one thing that we always say at the beginning and throughout this accelerator program is you have to shift your mindset now from you're not in a career anymore, you're running a business, you're not filling a role, you're solving a problem for the client. The moment you fully embrace that, not coming to people with your CV and chronologically telling them what you've done in the past, because it doesn't matter that much.
It doesn't.
The titles, the companies are not that important. What you have done is important.
Yes.
When you are able to embrace that fully, you start thinking of all the possibilities. You suddenly are faced with a real burden of choice. Because there are many things you could do. And that's why when you see people who are in this for a year or so, the most inspiring people for me are the ones who keep on telling me, I'm saying yes to everything, but it's so difficult, because you have to focus at the end of the day. And we say that too. But to be honest, there is a lot of opportunity out there then.
Right.
If you have done that, because your 15, 20 years of experience are tremendous. And you will find that you can create projects, work, products out of something you might have done 3 jobs ago. And it connects, right, in a situation. And it doesn't matter to the client that you've done that 10 years ago. It's valuable to them at that point. So if you look at that as your entire toolkit, right, everything that you have done, and not purely by title or by function, but there are things that transfer really well. Transferable skills that could be useful to companies in new situations. You suddenly find yourself with this absolute treasure trove, and all you need to figure out is how to bring that to market now. And I'm saying all because that's still not easy. But that mindset shift is the hardest thing at the beginning. I'm not interviewing for a role. I'm trying to solve their problem.
That's amazing. Like, shout out to the pioneers.
And I get to be surrounded by people like that day in, day out, So
that's so cool.
I wake up in the morning and my inspiration comes from that. I see people being more fulfilled, finding purpose, making money. Some people make more than their previous salary, some don't. But at the end of the day, they're happier for it, right? And so, and there's the other thing, right, that you said risk earlier. It used to be seen as extremely risky. Today, having a full-time job is also not risk-free as it used to be, right? And in a way, going down this path, whether you have left your job voluntarily or you were retrenched in some way, going down this path helps you build a second leg to stand on. Even if you go back into employment, which quite a few people do, and they should, right? There's nothing wrong with that. These zigzags are great because they actually bring new skills to organizations now. And this is where it gets interesting, because you have now people who have thought of themselves as a business leader of their own one-person business, now running functions internally that are giving them skills that they would not have had if they had just climbed the corporate ladder throughout, right? So it's more than an insurance policy. It's a second leg, a new skill, a new muscle that they have built that now allows them to completely differently create the next 20 years until, or maybe even beyond retirement, if they don't feel like stopping because it's so much fun, right? And maybe reducing and just doing it for 2 days a week. So that's where it gets really interesting for me, because it's breaking open dramatically in that second half, especially here in Asia and in Singapore. And so we don't know entirely where it leads, but we have good indications right now, right? Like that there's something that gives people more agency and more power to transform themselves rather than waiting for the right role to transform them, I would say.
Correct. Well, I love that what you just said. Like, one of the big motivators for me personally was be able to kind of do what I want to do. I enjoy what I do. Even if I had a full-time job, it's such a volatile market these days. And the question is, do I hope that I continue that path and it will be in the next 20 years in an organization, or do I give myself a shot and carve out something that I can build for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years that I can own, and I know that I'm in control, meaning that I'm able to manage it, build it, partner with people, grow something meaningful. You don't have to build the next Microsoft. I mean, that's at the moment not in my mind, right? But when you build a very big organization, it goes back to kind of the corporate side again. First, the structure all happens again. Just understanding like what you want, like what is your happy space, where's the space that you feel most fulfilled operating in. That's a sweet spot that you have.
It gets super interesting there. When you're not building the next Microsoft, you're not trying to build a unicorn, you're not raising venture capital, right? You're not raising funding. It's like it's entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
but it's not startup,
No.
right? What's interesting is that I know they come from big corporates or big SMEs or owner-run companies. They still want to work with those companies, just in a different way. It's just that the path of climbing the ladder on the inside is not satisfying for me anymore. And so I want to find a different way to bring value to these companies. And so it's interesting because you're still staying, like you said, in that space, right? You still have that amazing experience of being able to work with leadership teams on big things. Right, but in a different capacity. And I know people also who are not interested to move further up.
Yes.
And this is one motivation that came out very early on from some people who are on this path saying, look, I've already made it to chief revenue officer or regional, this role or country manager. I know what the next step is, and I'm not sure I want that because it just means working every weekend, being able to spend less time on the things that I like to do in leisure, right? Making a bit more money, yes, but is it worth it is the question. And so that's the moment where sometimes they take that left turn and say, let me try something else because it's just not inspiring for me.
I like what you said. Actually, that's so true. You hit the nail on the head for that one. Like, I don't dislike my career. You know, I enjoyed it also. It's taught me many things, which led to what I'm able to do today. But yeah, it just operates in a different capacity.
Yes.
You know, you have the fun and freedom to work with different clients, and like it's really fun. And you actually learn a lot more personally from me because I work with different companies, different leaders, and you hear different stories and different challenges. But if you distill everything down, it's kind of the same issues that everyone faces. But it's just very fascinating to running your own practice or your own business versus an internal candidate, right, in the corporate space. So
I mean, in the end, the whole corporate work has led us here also, right? So, and we rely, it is that experience that you now just bring to market in a different way. And this is so true. Almost everyone I speak to, they look back very fondly also. They were very successful. They were very successful. And up to that point where they say, I want to be successful differently, it has served me well so far, but it somehow doesn't serve me anymore. And I have built the financial foundation. And I have also earned the right to experiment now and to find out, and I'm going to give it some time. Like you said, find out, is there another path that maybe leads me into the next 10 years? Everyone who I know who is down this road is halfway through their work life, I would say, and is saying, there's something else out there that I want to explore now.
I'm just curious, like, what do you think would be the typical age group or level in this fractional space? I'm assuming they're probably more senior roles because they're mostly done the corporate route already, right? You said most of them are based in Singapore, right?
So in the community, 3/4, about 1,800 members are in Singapore. The community has an entry requirement of at least 10 years professional experience. And having the second requirement is having to work in or with Asia. The reason for, well, the motivation is different, I think. There are, of course, people who come straight out of college and decide to either launch a startup or become freelance designers, or the motivation is a different one. So what we've been talking about for the last half hour, right? the motivation halfway through your life is a different. This is the core of what bonds people together in the community, because this is a driver deep enough to go out of your comfort zone into uncharted territory, right? Secondly, though, when it comes to the work itself, you have to have a significant level of skills and experience that you can work with to repackage and to be able to install a new operating system or actually run a function fractionally, right? It starts at around 10, 15 years, depending on what you were doing in your previous work life, right? But some people are close to or around retirement and deciding to do this for different reasons. Also interesting, many people get on this route and just start exploring and maybe mentoring, which is a great way to see if this is something that you want to do, right? And a great way to also meet potential clients, etc. So there's different ways to get to the work for those who are more on towards the retirement age. Is like a big motivator. You know, I want to tie myself to organizations that I can make a difference to.
Yeah, I mean, that's on my mind also. As we age, as we get older, like what would my future work be like? Do I chart my destiny and give it a shot, or do I just continue working and hope that I keep working in that company or another company and try to get myself hired again and again in that, like a full-time role? You know, what do you think like fractional would be like in the future of work in the next 5 years, for example?
Fraction itself, most of the time limited to SMEs and startups, right? Because if you take that pure definition, you go into a function. Enterprise does not really, in my experience, it depends, because enterprise, if you go fractional, you have to, it's an HR question. If you go services, it's a procurement, right?
Yeah.
It's going in as a vendor, right? And I think many people that I know, and also at Flexter, we work with business unit heads, and we're a vendor to the organization. We're onboarded as a vendor, and we provide a service, often a package service. So instead of maybe answering the question as fractional, because fractional, I really don't know, Gerald. It's really hard to say. I think for startups and SMEs, I think, to be honest, I think it's going to be very successful. I think the independent worker at this level, right? The independent solopreneur who runs their own work, the sort of work that you do, the sort of work that some of the people do that are more working as in consulting or running workshops or running installing upgrades or transformation projects or change projects, etc. I think you have now opened up over the last few years a completely new talent pool to this. And if you look at that, and then you look at how organizations are much more open today to work with different people rather than the standard go-to external agencies they used to go with, I think that is really going to change the way that you bring in skills, expertise, change to your organization. And so it's opened up a third way, almost like you don't have to decide whether you want to hire or whether you want to bring in a consultant or agency or maybe both. You have a third way where you can bring in an operator. And so for that, I think that has a really, really bright future, especially in a time, we haven't talked about technology yet, but there is so much discussion around the need for deep experience in an age where you can get information at, not just information, analyzed, packaged information within like a 2-minute chat with an AI, right?
Yeah.
But the experience to help you make a decision with that information is still needed. And so that's the first one. The other thing, though, is that and this is great at PCA. You see this at PCA. You see this in the accelerator program also. The fractional leaders that we have, the independent consultants that we work with, many of them are embracing this technology for a number of reasons. One, they see it as a way for themselves to be able to be more productive because they can now create a team. Yep. That team, I mean, the AI cannot shift the tables before the workshop, but can do other things, right? The prep work, the marketing, and all of those things. Yeah. The second thing is they understand very well that they can now package that into their offer sometimes, right? So you can be a marketeer with a very good knowledge or better knowledge than in-house. Yeah. Why? Because in-house, maybe they don't have the time to, a lot of this is you have to play around with it. You have to experiment, right? They might not have the time because they're so busy in their day job. They might be required to wait for corporate training to come around instead of just figuring it out on their own. They might not be allowed to use the technology that they want, And so that's the two things that make me think that there's also just a new dynamism that comes in from these independent workers that are embracing this technology and are able to be change agents in different ways internally, right? So I think now the big question is, and I get this question sometimes of like, is everyone going to be fractional in the future? Absolutely not. Yeah, I don't think so. And I think there's two reasons for that. The first one is you will always need to have decision makers. You will need to have org charts. You will need to have people who are working full-time for maybe very long periods in one organization for 10 years to chart a long-term strategy for that organization in ways that the way we're talking about injection is not always possible. But the second reason is also it's not for everyone. Right. This motivation that we're talking about, not everyone has that motivation. And so I think it's always going to remain a subset of the overall workforce. I cannot say how big, but I think it's going to remain a subset of those who are curious, who decide, I want to take the leap, who are risk friendly and who are just driven and motivated to get up every day and open the inbox and get maybe 5 rejections on a Monday morning. And what are you going to do about it? And you move on, right? So I think there's a certain type of personality that also comes.
Yeah. Well, very good, interesting perspective. I think if I were to kind of think about it also, let's remove the word fractional and you look macro, what would the workforce look like with technology, with teams and businesses looking at streamlining, with technology and AI now removing a lot of the operational, maybe automation, things are happening. I'm imagining that what the world looked like. I don't even have any key data, right? But just kind of imagining and through my conversations with businesses and teams, it's like there will be perhaps a smaller workforce. The question is then how does the organization operate? Because I feel that the organizations will operate in no more like big clusters. I mean, depending on industry and all that, but it could be more, I'm thinking like smaller groups of people, like task force based work style, a bit more generalist. Perhaps it's because of the way things are shaping with information and all that. So the fundamental thing is how organizations are thinking about really focusing on the higher value human tasks, right, within the company, and how do we design around enabling that? Because we still need good decision making, we still need critical thinking, we still need creative kind of views, we still need ethics, right? And all these are, if I come to join the dots with technology and AI, these are still primarily will be perhaps human-based, right? And the question is, how do we function in that environment? And I also feel that therefore there might be a shift, I'm dreaming, like a shift towards more independent professionals in the workforce who have decided or are willing to do what it takes to be an independent professional. At the same time, partnering with other independent professionals to form groups of high value competency, but also critical strategic thinking and highly operational mindsets because of their experience that can then go back into big organizations and fuel spurts of projects or moments, right? It sounds like this because the day-to-day stuff, I feel like it's almost going to be operationalized in as much as possible. I'm thinking a little bit further by AI, by robotics, whatsoever. Therefore, you see waves of activity like this. Or we need to start something. It goes, builds out, operationalized, and then it just goes.
Yes.
You know, and then like, what's next? You don't hire 20 people for 5 years or 10 years. You get them in for a short sprint.
Yeah.
Right? It could be a year. The definition of sprint could change also as time goes by.
Oh, yeah.
And therefore, then what do we do with this? Like, we still need people. Then what's next? So I don't know. I'm just thinking that within the organization, how do we build that flexibility of competency and that thinking to operate like that? Because you have to be quite flexible in moving around to be part of a particular industry someone who has deep knowledge, right?
So well put, yes.
That's how I'm thinking about it. So if you look at the macro view, it's really about smaller workforces, but the cadence changes because it's not going to be like one long build. It's going to be like build in like boom, boom, boom sprints. Therefore, the hiring strategy and the job design changes. That's how I look at it. I'm long story short, that's how I'm seeing this squad-based, task-based, like a SWAT team.
Yes.
And you have a company of SWAT teams,
Yes.
because the robots will run everything else. I mean, I'm just dreaming.
Well, you could also have the SWAT team in-house. Ideally, you need different SWAT teams every 3, 6, 9 months. I'm way more interested in conversations around the future and AI, especially with AI and transformation that this will cause. If there are conversations around the value add rather than how can we use it to cut people? Because, of course, there will be some jobs that will not be as needed anymore, right? And we all know this because we're using Canva, or sometimes you don't need to hire a graphic designer. Sometimes you should still hire a graphic designer. It really depends on the use case. But 10 years ago, you always had to hire a graphic designer. Yeah. And so you don't need that anymore. You can choose, right? Yeah. And it's the same way that you can choose where the value add is really needed and where you can then bring in these task force, right? To move faster, to build more value, to not be stagnant and purely relying on who you have on your org chart, right? But to be able to say, we will flexibly bring in people, and these people are so good at integrating themselves quickly, getting in, upgrading us in a certain area and function, maybe even hiring new people full-time in and then getting out, like you mentioned. So you're creating a agility into an organization that is just not possible if you play purely within your org chart.
Correct.
And that brings the value to the people on both sides at the end of the day, right? And this is how ideally we work with technology to create more value rather than thinking of one cut after another, right?
Exactly.
Rather than thinking of replacing, we should think of building on top. And then, of course, we will restructure. But how do we build on top? This is more exciting for me in any day than talk about what else can you replace with AI. Like, I want to do more as an entrepreneur rather than cut. Yeah.
Exactly. We can see the energy, right? We're excited about this because like that's where my mind is also. It's like we need to rethink how organizations will be restructured, how the roles will be redesigned, and more importantly, how are we empowering the workforces or the employees having the right mindset to operate in this manner so that the teams have the right capability and competency to build new operating model or system, right? Be it in marketing, be it in finance, be it in legal, whatever, or even be it product development.
Yes.
Right? People need to be ready for some of these things to lead in this kind of environment and to operate in this kind of environments. Without clients, we don't exist.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And therefore, this close partnership of professionals working with professionals and also the thinking of professionals and professionals groups like what you're doing.
What I love is you asked about the adoption, right?
The
companies that are bringing in individuals or teams to do these things, I would say the first benefit that they see is that it allows them to punch above their weight. If we do this the traditional way, it's going to take longer, not get us there in the way that we want or need to. But if we do it like this and we bring in these operators, we are faster. This is where the adoption comes from. Adoption comes usually from a pain, right? To say like, I don't want to be in this situation anymore. Let me find something that helps me punch above my weight. You think that in companies, they might not change quickly, but when they have to, they do. I experience this. And I think also there are certain models that did not exist before our time, the way that certain agency models have come about or certain consulting models have come about. And this, for me, is just an evolution of that, actually. It is a new way to operate and to install something valuable to you that will help you punch above your weight. And so I think the moment more organizations realize that, they will just give the freedom to their people. The way they today give them the freedom to hire different agencies or consultants, they give the freedom to their people and to their business unit heads to just bring in different models. And then it might be the 3-person collective that is an expert in AI integration, or it might be the finance and HR duo that are for SME magic when it comes to operationalizing growth across new markets on the back end, on the system side. So whatever the combination might be, if you have the freedom to act on it, you will quickly find that people will solve the pains and the problems in new ways. And I think all it needs is a critical mass, right? You're going to start seeing it rolling. And all we need to do, I think this is now, for me, when I think of the ecosystem, also we just have to keep communicating it. And this is a communications job, is to talk about it, to see and to give volume to the conversation, because that will speed it up. And I see that a lot, and I'm super happy, therefore, that there is a whole ecosystem that is very dynamic and very passionate. And Gerald, you're running a podcast where you have all the interesting conversations. This is what it needs in order for adoption to just speed up. But I think it will come either way, right? It's just a question of how fast.
How fast, It's so fascinating. Just to touch on one thing that I've been thinking about a lot with my business partners also is like, what kind of mindsets do we need to function in this new world? If you define what the future professional looks like, what would that person be? Right? So it's the kind of 3 mindsets that we were talking about. One is you need to have a founder's mindset. Right, you need to think like an entrepreneur. That you no longer have a luxury of unlimited like budgets or headcount and all that. How do you work as a founder so that you're always optimizing for efficiency to grow the business, right? Because running our own businesses, we don't have luxury of like 20,000 people, right? Or so if you're a marketing person in an organization who has a founder's mindset, how do you operate best with that thinking? And now the incoming view of like with AI, with all these changes, how are you reacting to it? Not just business as usual. And with that, you're shifting the mindset already. So like the founder's mindset. The other pillar would be around all of us have to be like powerful collaborators. Like we need to collaborate, like your community in a PCA, like we should be doing a lot more partnerships and collaboration, because that's where we combine ideas, we share thinking, and we bring even greater value with obviously the client or the business in mind, right? And then the third pillar is being around like all of us should be creators. We should behave like creators, artists, like whatever, create ideas, bring new thinking constantly. So this is the kind of mindset that we've been really thinking about. Actually, we have a podcast coming out just really focused on just that topic itself, the future professional. So yeah, I think that's so intriguing. It's fascinating to see this shift in the ways of working, the ways companies will be evolving. How do individuals like ourselves collaborate and bring value and amazing perspectives to MNCs or even to SMEs or startups, right? So very, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It is. Is there anything else that you feel that you want to share with folks listening or watching with us, like where could we find you?
I'm on LinkedIn under Moritz Kaffsack. You can find Portfolio Careers in Asia at portfoliocareersinasia.com. You can find Flexer at flexer.ai. And then you can find our accelerator program, PCA Catalyst, at pcacatalyst.com.
Awesome. It's been an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for
Gerald.
being on, Moritz.
I had a great time. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for watching and listening. Stay tuned for more content, more guests, and more stories on the podcast. Catch you later. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.